The fourth episode of the Living History of India presents three distinct and landmark events in the history of modern India through the lived experiences of a remarkable couple, Professor Sadanand and Sudha Varde. The first event is the 1942 Quit India movement launched by Mahatma Gandhi. That was the beginning of the end of the British rule in India. At one level, it can be considered a failure since it did not directly result in the British leaving India. However, it was the first national-scale movement with mass participation from all walks of the society that made the unambiguous and non-negotiable demand of total independence. Historians may argue that the end of the British Empire in India was a historical inevitability which was bound to happen. But Gandhiji's approach of appealing to masses of ordinary citizens and showing them a way in which they can actively participate in the struggle for independence determined how it happened. This, in turn, shaped the entire nation in the early and precarious days of building a nation-state. The second event is the declaration of emergency by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in June of 1975. 28 years after gaining independence from the tyranny of a foreign power, citizens of India face the same treatment meted out by their own government. Ironically, many of the stalwarts of India's freedom struggle were jailed by the government of an independent India under the Maintenance of Internal Security Act. Freedom of assembly and expression were curtailed and due legal process was suspended. The third event was the suspension of the emergency followed by elections. The popular rage against the despotic rule during the emergency led to a massive electoral defeat of Mrs. Gandhi and her Congress party. A coalition of a motley group of parties with disparate and often incompatible ideologies came together under the name of Janata Party and won a majority at the center and 7 states. It subsequently formed a government at the center and in those states. The constant infighting amongst the constituent parties led to a downfall of the government in 1979 and a massive victory for Mrs. Gandhi and her Congress party. Professor Sadanand and Sudha Varde participated actively in these three events. This episode is recorded in 3 parts, one to cover each event. It consists of interviews with the two of them conducted in the summer of 2005 as they recall these events. The first part is in English and 2 other parts in Marathi. Professor Sadanand Varde was born on 6th of November 1925. From a very young age, he was captivated by Mahatma Gandhi and his strategies for attaining freedom from the British, especially during the 1942 agitation. He joined the Rashtra Seva Dal, an organization focused on social justice, following the Gandhian principles. He was even jailed for sedition when he was 18. Post-independence, he completed his Masters in Economics from Bombay University and taught economics in National College in Mumbai from 1949 to 1978. During that period, he was elected a councillor of the Mumbai Municipal Corporation for 15 consecutive terms from the Vandre constituency. His political work had a greater standing and special appeal because of his social activism. He was primarily a man of the people and for the people. His contributions to his constituency are still remembered even today after nearly 4 decades. During the days of emergency declared by Indira Gandhi, 1975 to 1977, he was jailed for 18 months for criticizing her and for being a leader of the opposition Socialist Party. After the defeat of the Congress Party and Indira Gandhi, he was elected member of the State Legislative Assembly in Maharashtra in 1977 as a member of the Janata Party. He was the Minister for Education, Sports and Cultural Affairs in the government of Maharashtra from July 1978 to February 1980. In addition to his political activities, he was on the editorial board of the Marathi weekly Sadhana from 1965 to 89 and again in 1997 to 98. There, he authored many bold, insightful and thought-provoking editorials for sadhana that are still read with great interest. He was instrumental in establishment of an orphanage and a school after the devastating earthquake in the Latur district of Maharashtra. He passed away on 29th of January 2007. Sudha Kotwal was born on 10th of October 1930 in a progressive and well-educated family. She was pulled into India's freedom struggle in her teenage years through Rashtra Seva Dal. Rashtra Seva Dal ignited a lifelong passion in her for social justice and for service to her nation. Post-independence, she became an active member of the cultural wing of Rashtra Seva Dal, named Kalapathak, and played a central role in the development of this wing from 1948 to 1974. Kalapathak used dance, drama and music to educate people and create social awareness in them through wholesome entertainment. She was a born dancer and played several different roles in the dance production of the Rashtra Seva Dal Kalapathak. In this period, she was also a founding member and trustee of Sane Guruji Arogya Mandir in Santa Cruz, Mumbai. Based on the ideals of Rashtra Seva Dal, she, along with her colleague Nalini Bapat, worked for the betterment of the underprivileged. They worked on educating the women in the surrounding slums. A school and health center were built for the education and well-being of the children residing in the slums as well. In addition to these activities, she was at the forefront of relief work launched by Rashtra Seva Dal after any natural disasters such as earthquakes and floods. She retired from public life in 2010 but continued till her last days to inspire, challenge and entertain anybody who came in her extensive social circle. She passed away on 9th of April 2014.
First of all, I want to ask you about your political. This is, first of all, as a way of introduction, this is Professor Sadanand Varde, and we are sitting in his house in Mumbai. So, start with your political life, your political introduction, your influences, early influences.
In 1942, I appeared for the matriculation examination, which was then conducted by the University of Bombay. It was for the entire Bombay presidency. And I stood very high. I stood 6th in the presidency. And of course, all started talking about a good civil service career, ICS. And exactly 1942 was the stormiest year of Indian politics, because I was after my matriculation, I had joined Elphinstone College. And those were stormy days. Every day there used to be some meeting, some agitation and so on. And I was in a very confused state of mind. What do I do? What do I do? And then Gandhiji's call was for the British to quit and for the Indian people to do or die. Now, this is the final phase in the struggle for independence. What do I do? What do I do? So I was in a confused state of mind, and by a stroke of luck, I happened to meet someone who has had a permanent influence on my life, not only my life, but thousands of young men in Maharashtra. S.M. Joshi. I didn't know that I was meeting S.M. Joshi because he was an underground leader. But the fascination was there because all the leaders were arrested, and amongst the underground leaders, most of them were socialists, Jayaprakash, Loya, S.M. Joshi, Gore, Sani Guruji and others. So I met one gentleman. He was dressed in a complete Muslim outfit. He had a face cap, a very black, what you call, achkan, and a flowing beard. And he spoke to me in Marathi. He spoke to me for about 30-40 minutes. He said, yes, you are a bright student, but this is a choice. This is the moment in the history of the country and in your personal life. You decide. So I was so inspired by what I listened that I decided that I will drop college and plunge into the movement. I dare not tell my father, that's my father, because he was very happy that I had scored well. And I don't think would I listen to any kind of this talk, but I took my brother in confidence, and one fine morning, without telling anyone, I packed some things and went to Konkan, to Malvan. Then I offered Satyagraha and was sentenced for a year in the Ratnagiri jail. So now, in jail I realized that mine was a blank slate. I didn't know anything. What was the national movement? What were the major developments? Gandhi, his ideas, the socialists, and so on. So, in the jail there used to be common study classes, common reading of books and discussions and so on. I mean, I found for the first time in my life a lot of brainstorming, many ideas. And I must say, most amongst us then were influenced very much by Karl Marx and his revolutionary ideas. And anyway, for a year, I was under the influence of friends, books, which kept me in an atmosphere that now I have got to do something. And then after I was released in 43, I'm sorry, 44 February I think I was released, and I didn't know, should I completely leave college? What should I do? But all my friends, particularly now in the Rashtra Seva Dal, now I came from jail and got associated with Rashtra Seva Dal, RSD, a socialist, secular, democratic youth organization whose object was to prepare young people to fight for freedom, and then after freedom to fight for a just society. And S.M. Joshi, Guruji and others were the leaders. So I got involved in Rashtra Seva Dal. I always say that I had one mother which gave me birth, and was responsible for my upbringing. In Rashtra Seva Dal, I got a second mother who gave me my values of life for all my life. It is because of Rashtra Seva Dal that I came to distinguish between right and wrong, what should I good and evil and so on. And a general equalitarian philosophy based on justice and free from all kinds of exploitation. Now, S.M. Elder said that you are a good student, you continue your studies and also do your Rashtra Seva Dal. That's how I was not directly involved in, because there was the Socialist Party, party politics. I was doing Seva Dal work, evening Shakha, then study classes. Then later on, under the leadership of Vasant Bapat and her, Sudha, so we had this cultural troupe. What I'm trying to say is that what we call in Marathi Samuhik Jivan, community life, community singing, singing, dancing, play acting, and then through them, getting your ideas through to the people, particularly the folk art and so on. And I was with these people involved with Vasant Bapat, Sudha, Avaben, Liladhar Hegde and others. Then I did my BA. I stood first in the college. I missed my first class, but I stood first. And then I wanted to be a full-timer. So for some time, I was a full-timer of the Rashtra Seva Dal, which meant that, I may have to be in Bombay. I was for 3-4 months in Solapur district. Anywhere where I am required to go, I have to go. Then it is in this, this is relevant for my future comment. Therefore, this is where I met Suza in Seva Dal, and we got involved, and ultimately we got married. And her father knew my inclination, knew her inclinations. So he said, for my sake, you do only one thing. You are BA. You complete your MA. That is my only request to you. I am not asking you to do your work. Then that was in 1950-52. We joined the Indian School of Economics at Mumbai, Bombay University. And as things would have it, 1952 was the first general election of the country.
Yes.
And in the assembly as well as the parliamentary election, I did a lot of work, particularly in the assembly elections. And till about March, I was busy. And May first week is the MA examination. So her father said, now you don't stay in Bandra. Come and stay with us in Dadar. He was he's a municipal officer, Dadar purification works near the station. So he would wake us up at 4 o'clock, give us tea, and I studied like hell. And ultimately appeared, both of us appeared. We had economics and political science, it appeared. And I got a first class. But there is a joke about it. Because everyone knew that I had not much studied. And I was not going to the university to find out my results. So my father asked my cousin, go and see the results. So he went and he saw. He said that Vaini, she has passed in the second class and Anubhai has failed. Nonsense. Because of the psychological atmosphere of the house, he didn't see the first class. He said, go again and see the first class. I would see the first class. So I give my credit to my father-in-law for my first class. In any case, now that I was in the first class and that in economics, including SM and our Bhavsai Rarade and others say, it's not necessary for you to be a full-timer. You can teach.
That was the condition my father put. That you must earn something.
That's true. But that was the condition on which I married her. It was not such a pleasant contract. Anyway, and then if I go back and look at those times, exciting moments in our life. People were concerned that we should get freedom. And there used to be discussions. And when I started teaching in this first in the Pozar College for 1 year, then I came to Bandra because this was very near, about a furlong from my house. In 5 minutes we are in the college. I came to teach here. So I was involved.
So I can, if you want, I can pause for a minute. So this was the early phase of your whatever you can say public life or political life. Then begins for nation also the independence, the election. So now is the phase of not struggling for something but doing something, more constructive phase.
Yeah.
So what was the atmosphere like? What were people thinking? The socialist ideas or the other, what was the struggle like? And
Well, I would say that there was what you call euphoria. And in the freedom struggle, the socialists were on the forefront. And there was this slogan, Garibon ki party, Socialist Party. And most of the socialist leaders took the view in the first elections that the Socialist Party, the socialists were an alternative to the Congress. And therefore, in the first elections, they would win. In fact, Bihar Socialist Party would win and Prakash would become the chief minister, like that. Achyut Patradhan was the only leader who said that you do not know the national spread of the Congress, the roots, how widespread they are in the rural areas. And don't think of being an alternative. It is time. You have to build the party. You have to do a lot of work. Today you are a corrective, not an alternative. And of course, he withdrew from politics for other reasons. And the results of the 1952 elections were tremendously disappointing to the socialists. Means, in Mumbai, I think we won only one seat. Bihar we lost. Where is the question of Jayaprakash becoming chief minister?
I think no, we need that light. Otherwise, okay. Then now try to turn that off and see what happens. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's the power fluctuation. So whether this light or that light, it's going to be, because even that one is fluctuating. So might as well leave that on. So turn that off. Okay.
So, I remember a long way back, the manifesto of the Socialist Party then. We were so taken in by public ownership that we wanted to nationalize all sugar industries, public ownership of this and that. That was the kind of, what should I say, it was more enthusiasm. I mean, what were the problems of the country, how do we fight poverty, what are problems of development, how do we raise capital. I mean, these kinds of issues were not sufficiently addressed. Of course, there were people like Ashok Mehta and Louis with deep thinking, but the angle, or I should say the bias was from the very start that the state must be at the helm of affairs. To some extent, I was also of that point of view. Maybe I had some reservations because of whatever economics reading that I had done. Now, during those days, it's true, I would say that young people were involved in public life, in parties like the Socialist Party. The Communist Party was there, no doubt, but because of its anti-national role in the 1942 movement, because of Russia's involvement in the
Second World War.
Second World War and calling it a people's war, they had become very unpopular. In fact, we used to have fights in the colleges also on that front. But what I wanted to say was, I would say that the general mass of students was involved in a big way. Though, if I look at those who were in jail of my age, most of them were students, but not a very big number. Now comes a stage after independence. I think in the 55, 56, such a big country, how do you administer it? It's a federation. So the constituent units then were just as the British had from time to time, as exigencies demanded, the provinces were formed. But now the demand came for a reconstruction of the political map of India, and therefore a States Reorganization Commission was appointed. Now, I must say that throughout this period I was very much involved in what was going on. I was not very mature in politics, but States Reorganization Commission, this recommendations came, and while many other states, Karnataka, that means our view was that language should be the basis of the formation of the state, because the Congress was committed to linguistic provinces, subject to certain modifications in border areas and so on. But because of this issue of Bombay City, Maharashtra was denied a unilingual state. I don't want to go into details, but that's how the struggle for Sayukta Maharashtra, and I as a young man, I was also involved in the Sayukta Maharashtra struggle, and for a couple of weeks I went to jail also for this demand. And then the Sayukta Maharashtra Samiti was formed. I say this because the first elections were organized under the banner of the Sayukta Maharashtra Samiti, and the Socialist Party was one of the constituents of the Sayukta Maharashtra Samiti. And I contested the corporation election in 1957, and that was my first electoral stint I got elected to the Bombay Municipal Corporation in 1957. So now, once I became a councillor at Mumbai, then the area of my public life, my public commitments, my interest in public issues, it became almost a daily affair because I was a councillor.
Yeah.
Not a day would pass. Half a dozen or a dozen people would come with their grievances, real, imaginary, whatever it was. And my father was very much irritated. What is this? Is this a house or a marketplace? People come, you must decide. Anyway, but then 57, I say this because this is my first experience as a representative of the people. My first experience as somebody speaking on behalf of the people in an elected house. I was a member, and I think I got 3 times elected, 57, 68, and I'm sorry, 57, 61 and 68. So 57 to 73 for 16 years, incidentally, I was there. And I could therefore do a lot of grassroots work. And my natural inclination, motivation was to go to those areas which were deprived of civic amenities. And I think that all happened because also my socialist background. So this is so far as my this early political life is concerned. Now here, one question I must say, because this question was raised, national issues and state issues. Can you stretch your state issues to such an extent that you ignore national problems? And this is really a major issue. That means that happened because when ultimately Maharashtra was considered, some border areas like Belgaum, Karwar, and anyway,
yeah,
they were not part of it. And still the struggle was on. And I felt that it would be proper because each state had this problem. That certain border areas which should have been there are in other states. Though they were geographically contiguous to that state. So I now remember that I was of the view that there is a limit to which you stress and stretch state demands and state to the detriment of a national interest. Now, these were also the days, even during our times. You talked about Nehru. I had a great regard for Nehru. And among some of the socialists, Nehru was, particularly Lohia, was much run down. We had our differences and our MPs expressed them in the parliament. But the fact remains that after partition, he put the country together, integrated it, faced enormous difficulties of mass migration of people from one. Whatever it is, but I think that was a great job that he did, and he deserved all the credit for it. But then time came for the planned development of this country. The National Planning Commission was appointed, and from the very outset, the socialists were very critical of the ways in which planning was approached. Because you see, the socialist view then was that public ownership must be the basis. Now, to some extent, you take the infrastructure, the steel industries, heavy industries, and so on. In the first three plans, I think, thanks to Nehru, that economic base was provided for the country. And I don't think socialist, I'm saying in retrospect because I was also part of that tribe, sufficiently appreciated the work that done. Well, as I said, I continued to be in public life all these years, and then came the emergency.
Now let me stop you there for a minute, because I had a question about this. So the period that you described, and maybe we can take it all the way till the time when the Sanyukta Maharashtra was formed, which was in 60, I believe, 1960.
1960.
So all up to that time, it was the politics of struggle against injustice, maybe foreign or maybe internal. From the 60s, and maybe Nehru's death can be considered to be a watershed event, that after that began the politics of construction. Now there, I think, there it seems that beyond somewhere, something seems to have lost, that there was not the same level of idealism, there was. So, I think you started talking, emergency is maybe the culmination of that losing of the soul or losing of the ways or something, but maybe the process started sometimes in the 60s. So,
in the 60s, Ashok Mehta,
he was the chairman of the planning commission, right? Wasn't he?
later.
Huh.
After he joined the Congress.
Huh.
But before that, in one of the party conferences, he put forward a thesis, compulsions of a backward economy. That the development of such a large continent, a country of continental size, is not the task of one political party. So there must be some political consensus. So he talked about areas of agreement on development. So where there are areas of agreement, let us put our shoulders together and take those areas outside
Political,
party
yes.
politics. That's how the split started, and he was dubbed as a collaborationist and so on. Later he joined the Congress and so on. But I must say, it is a little earlier thing to talk about construction. After Sani Guruji committed suicide because he was tremendously shaken up after Gandhiji's assassination, and he wanted to end his life, and he ended his life. So in his memory, the Rashtra Seva started a Sani Guruji Seva Pathak, Sarvada. I say this because I think this is a major contribution to the work camp movement of this country, because later on it went to colleges, universities and so on. And essentially I want young people, 25 young people, who will devote 1 year to this. And he himself resigned from party politics, and for 1 year they moved all over Maharashtra, constructing a road or an access or digging a well and so on and so forth. So this idea of dignity of labor, that those who work, we must associate with them, and that kind of thing. Now, amongst the political, it is the political wing of the party, I don't think we got much response. But then that movement continued since you talked about construction. Now you talk of construction in the sense of national development.
Yes.
Then, of course, there were differences about the emphasis on heavy industry to the neglect of small industries. And the one view was that this whole scheme of planning goes against Gandhi's ideas of decentralization, protection of cottage and state industries and small industries and so on. So the debate went on, but the fact remains that such a big country needed an infrastructure of roads, of steel, cement, chemicals, heavy chemicals, and so on. And I must say that the socialists were ultimately reconciled to that idea. So I wouldn't say that I as an individual or the party as such had a very major role to play in the construction or development of the country, because as an opposition, of course, we were a vigilant group, and we exposed corruption. We exposed, I wouldn't give you details now, but the socialists did a good job as an opposition, though their number was small. I'll give a very, very small, interesting instance of Nath Pai. He was my portrait is there. He was my idol and ideal. And he was a member of the Lok Sabha. So during the railway budget discussion, he was, Lal Bahadur Shastri was the railway minister. And he moved a cut motion. Now, a cut motion, Congress had a huge majority. But if a cut motion is passed, it's considered as a defeat of the government and a financial matter, and therefore it's vote of no confidence. So he had moved a cut motion. That means he said that a cut motion of 1 rupee to protest that there was no provision for Konkan railway in the budget. So he had moved a 1 rupee cut motion. Normally cut motions are withdrawn because they can never be passed. But to his luck, at that time, when the matter came for voting, the house was very, very poorly attended. And the congressmen were not there. And Nath Pai could see that when he was asked to withdraw the cut motion, he said, no, I don't want to withdraw. I want to press my cut motion. Let it be defeated. But Lal Bahadur Shastri saw that it won't be defeated, government would be defeated. I give this as an interesting instance. So ultimately Lal Bahadur Shastri said, okay, we make a provision of some 2 lakhs of rupees for Konkan Railway, or 2 lakhs for purpose. And that's how Konkan Railway became for the first time a feature of the railway budget. And then Nath Pai withdrew his cut motion. So parliamentary devices, the way you use it, H.V. Kamath used to say, what is the function of an opposition? Oppose, expose and depose. It is all right to say that, but after you depose, you have to run a government.
Yes.
And I must say that we are not sufficiently responsibly conscious about what running government would imply.